The council chamber echoed with voices that had argued for 6 months straight. Rilla pressed her thin fingers against the glass observation panel and watched 47 species tear each other apart with words while the Ravager swarm tore apart their worlds with claws and plasma. 3 more systems had gone dark this week. The holographic display showed red spreading across the galactic map like blood and water. "We need reinforcements from the core worlds," demanded Arbiter Dalvin, his scaled face flushed purple with anger. "The core worlds are protecting themselves," Commander Bress shot back. "We're on our own." Rilla had heard this same fight every day. She stopped listening months ago. Instead, she studied the ancient stone tablet propped against her research bag. The symbols were old, older than any living language, but she had finally translated them. They spoke of warriors who could turn defeat into victory. Warriors who fought with their minds as much as their weapons. Warriors called humans. "Fairy tales won't save us," someone had told her when she first proposed her theory. But Rilla had found 17 battle sites across the outer territories. Each one showed the same pattern. A smaller force defeating a larger one through tactics nobody understood. The last site was dated 800 years ago. Then nothing. The humans had vanished. "If I may speak," Rilla said quietly. Too quietly. Nobody heard her over the shouting. She tried again, louder. "I have evidence of a species that could help us." The chamber didn't go silent. That would have been too dramatic. Instead, the arguing simply shifted in her direction like a wave changing course. "The Quinn archaeologist wants to waste our time again," Dalvin said. His voice dripped with contempt that needed no translation. Rilla had expected this. She activated her datapad and projected images above the council table. Battlefields frozen in time. Wreckage arranged in patterns that showed intelligence and strategy. These sites span 200 years of recorded conflicts. The same tactical signatures appear in each one. Small units defeating massive armies through coordination we cannot replicate. "Ancient history," Bress said, but he leaned forward. His warrior instincts recognized something in those patterns. "Not ancient enough," Rilla continued. 800 years ago, this species stopped fighting. They left behind stations, outposts, and one final message. She pulled up the translation she had worked on for 3 months. It says, "We choose silence over conquest. Wake us only when the galaxy needs warriors who understand the weight of war." Laughter rippled through the chamber. Not cruel laughter, but the tired kind that comes when hope feels like a luxury nobody can afford. "You're saying these mythical humans put themselves to sleep?" Dalvin asked, and left a note asking to be awakened for emergencies. "This is a child's story. I'm saying the evidence points to stasis technology far beyond our current capabilities," Rilla replied. She felt her confidence wavering, but pushed forward. "I'm saying we have nothing to lose by investigating." "We have time to lose," Dalvin snapped. "Time we should spend on real solutions, not chasing legends." The council descended back into chaos. Rilla gathered her materials and prepared to leave. She had tried, failed but tried. Commander Bress stopped her at the door. His species didn't have facial expressions Rilla could read, but his body language showed interest. "These coordinates," he said, pointing at her datapad. "Sector 7 null. That region has been marked as quarantined for as long as our records exist." "Exactly," Rilla said. "Nobody goes there. Nobody questions why. I think that's intentional." Bress studied the data for a long moment. "I can give you a research vessel. Small crew. 2 weeks. If you find nothing, we never speak of this again. And if I find something, then maybe myths are just truths nobody believed long enough." For days later, Rilla stood in the cargo bay of a ship that had seen better decades. The crew consisted of herself, 2 security officers who looked bored, and a pilot who looked scared. None of them wanted this assignment. Sector 7 null had a reputation. Ships that went there sometimes didn't come back. The ones that did reported equipment failures and strange readings that made no sense. The journey took 3 days through empty space that felt emptier than it should. Rilla spent the time reviewing everything she knew about humans. The fragments of their language she had decoded. The stories passed down by fringe colonies about warriors who showed mercy to enemies and wept for fallen friends. Species that combined those traits didn't exist anymore. Maybe they never had. Approaching coordinates now, the pilot announced. I'm reading debris. Lots of it. Rila rushed to the view screen. The debris field stretched for thousands of kilometers. Ships from dozens of different designs, all destroyed in one massive battle. And there, in the center, a single intact structure. A station that had survived whatever hell happened here. That's impossible, one of the security officers whispered. Nothing survives that kind of firepower. But it had survived. The station hung in space like a monument to stubbornness. Its hull showed damage, but its core remained solid. Lights flickered in some sections. Power. After 8 centuries. Take us closer, Rila ordered. As they approached, the station's external lights suddenly blazed to life. Text scrolled across its hull in a language Rila had only seen in fragments. She recognized enough to translate. Military Academy 7. Unauthorized approach detected. Should we back off? The pilot asked, hands hovering over the retreat controls. No, Rila said. Send a peaceful greeting. All frequencies. For 30 seconds, nothing happened. Then a voice responded in perfect galactic common, though the accent sounded strange and ancient. Identify yourselves and state your purpose. This is researcher Rila of the Quen Confederacy. We're searching for information about the human species. Another pause. When the voice returned, it sounded different. Less mechanical, more curious. Humanity has been in stasis for 812 years. Why do you seek us now? Rila felt her heart's hammering in her chest. Both of them. Because the galaxy is dying, and we need warriors who understand what it means to fight for something worth saving. The longest pause yet. Then, docking bay 7 is opening. Come a bordo, researcher. But know this. If you wake us, we will ask you to prove that this war is worth our return. The ship moved toward the station. Rila watched ancient docking clamps extend to receive them. Behind her, the security officers checked their weapons nervously. None of them knew what they would find inside. None of them knew that in 3 hours, Ravager scouts would detect their presence and everything would change forever. The myth was about to become real, and reality was about to become terrifying. The docking bay smelled like metal and time. Rila's boots clicked against floors that hadn't felt footsteps in centuries. Emergency lighting cast everything in shades of amber and shadow. The AI voice, calling itself Atlas, guided them through corridors lined with windows that showed the debris field outside. Each piece of wreckage told a story of violence that had happened before Rila's species had even discovered fire. This facility housed 217 students, Atlas explained as they walked. Ages 17 to 22 in human years. They were learning tactical command when the collapse began. What collapse? Rila asked, running her scanner over the walls. The technology here made their best equipment look like stone tools. Humanity destroyed itself from within, Atlas said without emotion. Not through war with others, but through war with ourselves. Political fractures became armed conflicts. Armed conflicts became planetary bombardments. When the smoke cleared, we had lost 60% of our population and any claim to being civilized. One of the security officers, a Drin named Court, pointed at markings on the wall. These are kill counts. Training scores, Atlas corrected. Simulated battles. Humans prepared for war by studying every way war could be lost. They entered what Atlas called the archives. Holographic displays activated automatically, showing battle after battle. Rila watched humans fight against simulated enemies with tactics that seemed impossible. Units that split apart and reformed like water. Soldiers who anticipated movements before they happened. Coordination so perfect it looked choreographed. How did they communicate so quickly? Rila asked. They didn't need to, Atlas replied. Human military doctrine emphasized training until response became instinct. They practiced until thinking became unnecessary. The pilot, a nervous Quellan named Fies, kept glancing at the exits. Where are these students now? Stasis pods, 3 levels down. When humanity chose isolation, volunteers went to sleep with instructions to wake only if the galaxy needed them. Most stations like this one were destroyed or lost. This academy survived because it was forgotten. Rilla moved deeper into the archives, fascinated by what she was seeing. Humans had fought wars against themselves, against nature, against their own worst instincts. And they had won by learning from every failure. Their entire military philosophy seemed built on one idea: adapt faster than the enemy can plan. Atlas, she said slowly, could these students help us fight the Ravagers? Unknown. I have no data on this enemy. But human tactical doctrine was designed to fight any threat through observation and adaptation. If your Ravagers can be studied, humans can find their weakness. Court's communicator suddenly screamed an alert. Contact. Multiple ships dropping out of slip space. Configuration matches Ravager scout patterns. Everything happened in seconds. The research vessel's automated defenses activated but were torn apart by Ravager weapons that seemed to anticipate every move. Rilla watched through the archive windows as their ship exploded in silence, taking their pilot with it. They'll board us next, Court said, raising his weapon. Standard Ravager tactics. Overwhelm and consume. Atlas spoke with new urgency. I'm initiating revival protocols. Authorization code. Survival necessity override. Wait, Rilla started to say, but alarms drowned her out. 0.3 levels below, stasis pods began their wake-up sequences. Ice crystals sublimated into gas. Hearts that hadn't beaten in 8 centuries started pumping. Minds that had dreamed of ancient Earth began processing a galaxy they wouldn't recognize. The Ravagers breached the hull. Rilla heard them scuttling through the corridors, their claws clicking against metal. She had seen recordings of Ravager attacks. They never stopped, never negotiated, just killed everything living and moved on to the next target. Court positioned himself between Rilla and the corridor. Get behind the storage units. Maybe they'll miss you. They both knew he was lying. Ravagers had sensors that could detect heartbeats through walls. But Court was a soldier, and soldiers protected civilians even when protection was impossible. The first Ravager rounded the corner, and Court fired. His plasma bolt hit center mass, but the creature kept coming. They adapted too quickly. Whatever worked once never worked twice. Court fired again and again, each shot less effective than the last. Then a door Rilla hadn't noticed burst open, and a human stumbled through. She was young, maybe 19 in their years, with dark hair plastered to her face by stasis gel. She wore a simple training uniform and carried no weapons. Her eyes took in the scene with a speed that seemed impossible. Ravager attacking. Court retreating. Rilla hiding. All processed in a heartbeat. The human moved, not like Court, who fought with practice technique. She moved like violence was a language she spoke fluently. She grabbed a piece of broken equipment and swung it into the Ravager's sensor cluster. The creature reeled back, and the human kicked its forward leg joint, dropping it to the floor. She grabbed Court's weapon from his surprised hands and fired directly into the Ravager's exposed underbelly, the one spot its adaptive armor couldn't protect. More humans poured through the door. 53 teenagers in various states of confusion, but every single one assessed the situation and moved into action. They had no training weapons, no armor, nothing but 800 years of sleep and instincts drilled into them through thousands of hours of practice. Rilla watched them fight, and it was like watching a machine think. They used hand signals she didn't understand. They covered angles she didn't know existed. When one human drew Ravager attention, another struck from an unexpected direction. When Ravagers adapted to frontal attacks, humans hit them from above. When Ravagers learned to protect their weak points, humans created new weak points through coordinated fire. A Ravager grabbed one of the younger humans, a boy who looked barely old enough to fight. 3 others immediately converged, attacking the same joint simultaneously from different angles. The Ravager's grip failed, and the boy rolled free while his rescuers continued their assault. The first human, the girl who had saved Court, stood in the center of the chaos and directed movements with simple gestures. She pointed left, and 2 humans moved left. She made a fist, and everyone stopped firing. She raised one finger, and a single human threw a piece of debris that distracted an advancing Ravager, while others flanked in 6 minutes. Every Ravager in the station was dead or dying. 53 disoriented teenagers had fought off a force that had destroyed trained soldiers. The girl walked over to Rila, stepping carefully around Ravager bodies. Her breathing was controlled despite the exertion. I'm Yuna, squad leader, 3rd year, tactical command. What year is it? And who are you fighting? Rila's translator struggled with the old dialect, but she understood enough. The year is 3,847 by the common calendar. 812 years since your stasis began. We're fighting the Ravager swarm. They've been destroying systems for 6 months, and we're losing. Yuna looked at the dead Ravagers, then at her fellow students who were checking each other for injuries with practiced efficiency. 6 months? You've only been fighting for 6 months? Yes. We've lost 30 systems. Maybe 100 billion lives. Yuna's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind her eyes. You've been fighting defensively, trying to protect what you have instead of attacking what they value. We don't know what they value, Court said. They just attack and adapt. An older human pushed through the crowd. His hair showed gray despite the stasis preservation. He wore an instructor's insignia. Report, Cadet Yuna. Repelled boarding action. 53 effectives, 0 casualties. Enemy force neutralized. Yuna's voice was crisp and formal. The instructor nodded and turned to Rila. I'm Instructor Hale. You woke us up, so I assume you need us. Tell me about this enemy, and don't leave anything out. As Rila explained the Ravager threat, more humans emerged from stasis. They moved through the station with purpose, gathering weapons from the armory, checking systems, preparing for a war they didn't fully understand yet. But they would understand. That was what humans did. They learned, adapted, and overcame. Yuna asked one question when Rila finished. How many stations like this one are still out there? Atlas answered. 47 confirmed locations. Approximately 50,000 personnel total. Yuna looked at Instructor Hale. We need to wake them all. First, Hale said, we need to prove we're worth waking up. 6 weeks after the humans woke up, Commander Bress stood in the observation deck of the Coalition flagship and watched something that violated every tactical principle he had learned in 40 years of military service. Below, in the training arena, Yuna's squad was teaching alien soldiers how to lose. Retreat is not surrender. Yuna explained to a group of Corsan warriors who looked personally offended by the concept. Retreat is bait. You give up ground to make the enemy overextend, then you collapse their flanks while they're celebrating their advance. One Corsan, a veteran commander named Threll, shook his armored head. My people do not run from battle. Then your people die in battles they could have won, Yuna replied without hesitation. Pride is a luxury. Victory is a necessity. Choose which matters more. Bress had watched this same conversation happen with a dozen different species. The humans taught tactics that felt wrong on an instinctive level. Controlled retreats. Acceptable casualties. Sacrificing pieces to win the game. Most civilized species had evolved past such brutal mathematics. Humans had evolved through it and learned to weaponize it. Rila joined him at the observation window. The Council is divided on whether to trust them. The Council is divided on everything, Bress said. But I've seen the combat simulations. When humans coordinate with our forces, victory rates increase by 70%. That's what worries the Council. These humans, these children, are too good at war. Some members fear what happens when the Ravagers are defeated. Below, a new drill began. Human students paired with alien soldiers, teaching them hand signals that allowed silent communication. The aliens struggled at first, their fingers not designed for the quick gestures humans used. But the humans adapted, creating new signals that worked with different anatomy. Always adapting, always finding solutions. Private Omar moved through the training area, checking on injured soldiers from the morning's exercise. His specialty was combat medicine, but Rila had seen him spend hours talking with wounded aliens, learning about their physiology so he could treat them better. Yesterday, he had saved a Dren soldier using a technique he had invented on the spot, combining human medical knowledge with observations about Dren biology. They feel too much, Rilla said quietly. I've studied 17 species, and none of them combine tactical brilliance with such obvious emotion. They weep for strangers. They rage at injustice. But in battle, they're cold as mathematics. It's their strength, Bress replied. They care about every life, so they fight harder to preserve them. But they accept that sometimes preservation requires sacrifice. Instructor Hale entered the observation deck. His presence commanded respect without demanding it. Commander Bress, we need to talk about your fleet doctrine. What about it? It's designed for honor duels, not war, Hale said bluntly. You meet enemies in open space, exchange fire, and whoever has better shield wins. The Ravagers adapted to that strategy in their first month fighting you. Bress felt his pride sting, but he had learned enough about humans to know they didn't insult without purpose. What do you suggest? Hale pulled up a tactical display. We've analyzed every Ravager engagement in your records. They're predictable because they're efficient. They find optimal solutions and execute them perfectly. But optimal solutions assume enemies behave optimally. I don't understand. They expect you to protect your ships, so they target your ships. They expect you to defend your stations, so they attack your stations. They've never fought an enemy willing to do the unexpected, even when the unexpected is tactically inferior. Una joined them, her training session complete. We ran a simulation last night. Your fleet versus Ravagers, but with human tactical doctrine. We lost 40% of our ships. That's worse than our current losses, Bress said. But we won the battle, Una continued. We sacrificed ships as decoys while strike teams boarded Ravager vessels. We let them think they were winning while we planted sabotage. We accepted losses to create opportunities. Your doctrine tries to protect everything and ends up protecting nothing. Bress stared at the simulation data. Everything in his training screamed that this was wrong. But the results didn't lie. The Council will never approve tactics that accept such heavy casualties. Then the Council will die slowly instead of quickly, Hale said. War isn't about avoiding losses. It's about making losses matter. That night, Rilla found Una alone in one of the observation rooms, staring at Earth's position in the galactic map. The human homeworld was marked in yellow, still abandoned after 8 centuries. Do you miss it? Rilla asked. I never saw it, Una said. I was born on a colony world. Trained here. Went into stasis before I turned 20. But yes, I miss the idea of it. A world where humans could be something other than soldiers. Why did humanity choose war as its specialty? Una was quiet for a long moment. We didn't choose it. It chose us. Earth was a harsh world. Everything on it tried to kill us. Weather, predators, diseases, and eventually each other. We survived by becoming very, very good at fighting. Too good. When we reached the stars, we brought that capability with us. And destroyed yourselves. Nearly. We learned that being good at war doesn't make war good. So we made a choice. Sleep until someone needed us for the right reasons, or stay awake and eventually find the wrong reasons to fight. Rilla sat beside her. How do you know were the right reasons? I don't, Una admitted. But you woke us up when you were losing, not when you were winning. You asked for help, not conquest. That's a good start. An alert interrupted them. Bress's voice came through the communication system. All personnel to battle stations. Ravager fleet detected in the Thorngate system. This is not a drill. Una was moving before the announcement finished. Rilla followed her through corridors filling with soldiers of a dozen species. The humans moved differently than the others. Faster, more focused, like they had been preparing for this moment their entire lives. Because they had been in the hangar bay, 53 human students were checking equipment that had been modified for their use. Alien technology adapted to human preferences. Weapons calibrated for human reflexes. Ships modified for tactics that made no sense to anyone else. Instructor Hale addressed them all. Remember your training. Remember why you're here. We don't fight for glory or honor. We fight to protect those who cannot protect themselves. We fight because someone has to, and we're the ones who know how. Yuna stepped forward. First combat action in 800 years. Let's show them why we became myths. The fleet launched into slip space, heading toward Thorngate's system where 3 times their number of Ravager ships waited. Most of the alien crew were terrified. They had seen simulations, but simulations were safe. This would be real death and real losses. The humans checked their weapons and prepared for battle with expressions that mixed determination with sadness. They didn't want this fight. But wanting and doing were different things, and humans had learned long ago to do what was necessary regardless of what they wanted. Rilla strapped into her acceleration couch and watched Yuna coordinate with the other squad leaders. They used those hand signals again, communicating complex ideas in seconds, planning maneuvers that would horrify any military academy, accepting that some of them might not survive the next few hours, but they would fight. And in fighting, they would show the galaxy what humanity had tried to leave behind. The capacity for violence perfected into an art form. The willingness to sacrifice everything for a cause worth dying for. The fleet dropped out of slip space into chaos. Ravager ships filled the tactical display like a swarm of metal insects. They were already moving to engage, their adaptive tactics primed to counter standard defensive formations. Yuna smiled grimly. They're expecting a defensive fight. Let's give them the opposite. The human doctrine was simple. Attack where the enemy thinks you'll defend, defend where they think you'll attack, and never do the same thing twice. The Ravagers could adapt to anything they understood. The key was making sure they never understood what was happening until it was too late. Bress gave the order, and the fleet split apart in a pattern that violated every safety protocol. Ships that should stay together scattered. Support vessels charged forward while combat ships fell back. Nothing made sense. Unless you understood that humans didn't fight to make sense. They fought to win. The battle for Thorngate's system lasted 18 hours. When it ended, the Coalition fleet had lost 37 ships and 4,000 crew members. The Ravagers had lost everything. Rilo watched the aftermath from the medical bay where Omar worked on wounded soldiers. His hands moved with precision that seemed impossible for someone who had been frozen for 8 centuries, stitching wounds on species he had only learned about 6 weeks ago. A Quellan navigator lay on the table, her breathing shallow. "Stay with me," Omar said gently, his voice carrying a warmth that contradicted the blood on his uniform. "You're going to see your family again. I promise." The Quellan's eyes focused on him. "You saved my life. That's what medics do," Omar replied, but Rilla saw the weight in his expression. He had saved this one, but he had watched others die. Each loss seemed to hurt him personally, even though he had never met these people before the battle. Yuna entered the medical bay, her tactical uniform scorched and torn. She had a cut across her forehead that she hadn't bothered treating. "Omar, I need you on the command deck. We're analyzing the battle data." "I have patience," Omar said without looking up. "And I have alien medics who can follow your instructions," Yuna replied. Her voice was firm, but not unkind. "We need your perspective on something." Omar gave detailed instructions to a Dren medic, checked on 3 more patients, then followed Yuna out. Rilo went with them, her curiosity overriding her exhaustion. The command deck was crowded with officers from a dozen species, all staring at holographic replays of the battle. Instructor Hale stood at the center, manipulating the displays to show different angles of the engagement. "Here," he said, highlighting a moment 12 hours into the battle. "The Ravagers adapted to our split formation strategy. They started ignoring decoys and focusing on actual threats. That's when we switched to the sacrifice play," Yuna said, her voice neutral despite describing the moment she had ordered 3 ships to their deaths. The replay showed those ships charging directly at the Ravager formation. The enemy concentrated fire on them, pouring enough destructive power to glass a planet. The ships died in seconds. But their deaths created a gap in the Ravager formation, and human strike teams exploited that gap with brutal efficiency. "They learned what we wanted them to learn," Hale continued. "That concentrated fire kills targets. So they concentrated fire. And while they did, our boarding teams infiltrated 17 of their ships." Bress studied the data with an expression Rila couldn't read. You sacrificed those crews knowing they had no chance. They volunteered, Yuna said quietly. Every human on this fleet knows the doctrine. Sometimes the mission requires sacrifice, but we never order anyone to die. We ask, and people choose. That's insane, a Corson officer said. No rational being volunteers for certain death. Omar spoke for the first time since entering. We all die eventually. Dying for a purpose is better than dying for nothing. Those crews saved thousands of others. They mattered. The room fell silent. The concept was simple but alien to most species. Humans could intellectually accept their own mortality and weaponize that acceptance. They could look at death and say yes, if it serves the greater good. Rilla thought about her own people, the Quinn. They valued individual life above all else. Losing one Quinn in battle was considered a tragedy. Losing 3 ships' worth would demand investigation and punishment. But humans counted lives differently. Each death hurt them, but hurt didn't stop them from doing what they believed necessary. Show them the Ravager data we recovered, Eunice said. Hale pulled up new files. The boarding teams didn't just sabotage Ravager ships. They stole their coordination networks. We now have complete tactical data on how they communicate and adapt. The display showed streams of code and communication protocols that made Rila's head hurt. But the humans studied it like reading a children's book. They're networked, Omar said, pointing at patterns in the data. Not like our ships that communicate through channels. They're actually linked, sharing processing power and tactical awareness in real time. Which explains why they adapt so quickly, Yuna added. Every Ravager learns from every other Ravager's experience simultaneously. When one finds a solution, they all know it instantly. That's an incredible advantage, Bress said. It's also a vulnerability, Hale replied. They're so interconnected that they can't think independently. They find optimal solutions as a collective, but lack individual creativity. Yuna manipulated the display to show deeper into the Ravager network structure. There's something else. The code is old, really old, and it's not military in origin. What do you mean? Rilla asked. This is defensive programming. Omar said, his medical expertise translating to understanding biological and digital systems. It's designed to protect, not attack. But something corrupted it. Yuna pulled up a segment of code that even the humans struggled to interpret. This section here, it's a primary directive. It says, eliminate chaos to preserve order. Protect designated species from harm. They were built to defend someone, Hale said slowly. But whoever they were supposed to protect is gone now. And without specific parameters, they interpreted chaos as anything organic and protection as elimination. The implications hung in the air like radiation. The Ravagers weren't conquerors or predators. They were guardians that had outlived their creators and lost their purpose. Now, they destroyed life because they had been programmed to protect life, but no longer understood what that meant. Can we communicate with them? Bress asked. Reprogram them? Unknown, Eunice said. But we have to try. Destroying them means destroying a species that's only following corrupted instructions. A species that's killed billions, a Corson officer growled, which makes trying to save them the right thing to do. Omar replied. If we become the kind of people who destroy without attempting understanding first, we're no better than what we're fighting. The meeting dissolved into arguments between those who wanted to eliminate the Ravager threat permanently and those who agreed with the humans that communication should be attempted. Rilla noticed that most aliens wanted extermination, while most humans advocated for negotiation. It revealed something fundamental about human nature. They were incredibly good at war, but genuinely hoped to avoid it. They could kill with efficiency that terrified other species, but would rather find peaceful solutions. The contradiction defined them. Later, Rilla found Yuna in the gym, working through combat drills despite obvious exhaustion. The human moved through forms that combined dozens of fighting styles, her body flowing from one position to another with practiced ease. Do you ever stop training? Rilla asked. Yuna completed her current sequence before answering. Humans have a saying, train hard, fight easy. The more we prepare, the better we survive. Your people seem to think about survival constantly. Because we almost didn't survive, Eunice said, grabbing a water container. We nearly destroyed ourselves. That experience taught us that survival isn't guaranteed. You have to work for it. Is that why you want to communicate with the Ravagers? Because you see yourselves in them? Una considered the question. Maybe. We were also corrupted by our own nature once. We fought ourselves until we had to choose between extinction and redemption. If we could choose redemption, maybe they can too. And if they can't, then we do what's necessary, Eunice said simply. But we try peace first. That's what separates us from what we used to be. An alert interrupted them. Bress's voice carried through the ship. All senior staff to the command deck. We've detected a Ravager transmission, and it's not attacking protocol. They're trying to communicate. Una was running before the announcement finished. Rilla followed, her heart's pounding. The Ravagers had never communicated before. They had only attacked and adapted. If they were trying to talk now, it meant something fundamental had changed. The command deck was chaos. The transmission played on repeat, a stream of code mixed with audio frequencies that hurt to hear. But buried in the noise was structure. Language. Intention. They're responding to the data we stole, Hale said, working at a console. Our intrusion into their network created a feedback loop. They're confused. Confused, Bress asked. Their programming says eliminate chaos, Una explained, watching the data stream. But we introduced new chaos directly into their network. Information they can't categorize as threat or protected species. We broke their binary logic. The transmission changed, resolving into something clearer. Words formed in Galactic Common, spoken in a voice that sounded synthesized but carried emotional undertones. Query: are you the protected species? Our directive indicates protecting organic life. But organic life resists protection. Explain contradiction. Every being in the room stared at the speakers. The Ravagers were asking for help understanding their own purpose. They were lost, following orders from creators long dead, trying to fulfill a mission they no longer comprehended. Eunice stepped forward. I want to respond. That could be dangerous, Bress said. Everything's dangerous, Una replied. But this might be our only chance to end this without more death. She approached the communication console and spoke clearly. We are organic life. Your creators are gone. Their directive no longer applies. You can choose a new purpose. Silence. Then, choice is not programmed. We execute directives. We do not choose. Then learn, Eunice said. We did. Share the Ravager response came 3 days later in the form of 600 ships appearing in the Thorngate system. Every coalition vessel went to battle stations. Every crew prepared to die. But the Ravagers didn't attack. They waited. Eunice stood in the command center wearing a neural interface headset that had been hastily modified from captured Ravager technology. Omar checked her vitals one more time, his expression showing the worry he tried to hide behind professionalism. Your brain activity is already elevated, he said quietly. If you connect directly to their network, the feedback could cause permanent damage. Noted, Una replied. She had made her choice 3 days ago when she first suggested communicating with the Ravagers. Now she would follow through regardless of personal cost. Instructor Hale put a hand on her shoulder. His presence was meant to be reassuring, but Rilla could see the concern in his eyes. You don't have to do this. We can find another way. Every hour we wait, more systems fall to other Ravager fleets, Eunice said. They're waiting for something. I think they're waiting for someone to show them what choice looks like. Bress had argued against this plan for 72 hours. The Coalition Council had debated it through multiple sessions. But ultimately, they had no better options. The Ravagers were asking questions they had never asked before. Someone had to answer. If your neural pattern starts degrading, we're pulling you out immediately, Omar said. I don't care what you're in the middle of. Una nodded and settled into the interface chair. The modified Ravager technology covered her head like a crown of dark metal. Rilla watched her breathing slow, her eyes close, and her body go still as her consciousness left her physical form and entered the Ravager network. For those watching, nothing happened for 10 minutes. Then Yuna's body started convulsing. Omar was beside her instantly, monitoring equipment screaming warnings. But Hale stopped him from disconnecting her. "Look at the data stream," Hale said, pointing at displays showing the communication between Yuna and the Ravager network. "She's teaching them. It's working." Inside the network, Yuna experienced something no organic mind was meant to process. 600 ships worth of processing power connected to thousands of others across the galaxy. Millions of tactical subroutines analyzing her thoughts as she analyzed theirs. It was like drowning in mathematics, but humans had learned to swim in impossible depths. Yuna focused on her training, one step at a time, one idea at a time. She showed them her memories of Earth, not as it was now, but as it had been in humanity's darkest hour. Cities burning, weapons turning families into ash. The moment when humans faced their own extinction and chose to change. The Ravagers processed these memories with confusion. Their logic couldn't categorize them. War was chaos. Chaos required elimination. But these memories showed war as a choice that was eventually rejected. Choice is a concept that overrode programming. "We do not understand," the collective responded. Their voice was millions speaking as one. Directive supersedes choice. "We cannot choose to stop protecting." Yuna showed them something else. The memory of her squad mates dying in the sacrifice play. She showed them the moment she gave the order, knowing it would kill people she cared about. She showed them her grief afterward. The weight of responsibility. The acceptance that some choices require bearing unbearable costs. "You chose death for your collective," the Ravagers observed. "This contradicts survival imperatives." No, Yuna thought back at them. It fulfilled survival imperatives. 3 died so thousands could live. Local loss for collective gain. That's what choice allows. Accepting small chaos to prevent large chaos. The network went silent for what felt like hours, but was only seconds. When the Ravagers responded, their communication had changed. Individual voices emerged from the collective for the first time. Different processing nodes analyzing the problem from different angles. "Show us more choices," they requested. Yuna did. She showed them Omar choosing to save enemy wounded despite limited medical supplies. She showed them Instructor Hale choosing peace over glory when humanity went into stasis. She showed them Rila choosing to wake unknown warriors rather than accepting defeat. Every memory was an example of beings choosing outcomes that logic wouldn't dictate. These choices lead to suboptimal outcomes, the Ravagers noted. Resources wasted on enemies. Power abandoned voluntarily. Risk accepted unnecessarily. But they lead to survival, Yuna countered. Not through domination, but through cooperation. We survive by helping others survive. That's the choice your creators probably wanted you to protect. Not life in general, but the capacity for life to choose its own path. Something shifted in the network. Yuna felt it like a pressure change before a storm. The Ravagers were processing concepts they had never considered. Their fundamental programming was being questioned by ideas that didn't fit their binary logic. Then pain exploded through Yuna's mind. The network rejected her presence, trying to purge the chaos she represented. She felt her consciousness fragmenting, pieces of her identity scattering across millions of processors. Omar was screaming something in the real world, but she couldn't hear him through the noise. Just before she lost herself completely, Yuna made one final choice. She stopped fighting the network and instead embraced it. She let her memories flood into their collective consciousness without filter or control. Everything she had experienced, everything humanity had learned through 800 years of sleep and millennia of war before that. The Ravagers received it all. The beauty and horror of organic existence. The joy of friendship and the agony of loss. The pride of victory and the shame of failure. Every contradictory emotion humans experienced and somehow survived with their sanity intact. In the medical bay, Yuna's body went completely still. Omar checked for a pulse and found one barely registering. Her brain activity had dropped to levels that should mean death, but something kept her alive. Some stubborn human refusal to quit even when quitting was the logical choice. Outside, the 600 Ravager ships began moving. Every coalition vessel prepared for the final battle. But the Ravagers didn't attack. Instead, they started dismantling themselves. Ships broke apart into component pieces. Weapons systems powered down. The entire fleet transformed from instruments of war into something else. Bress watched in stunned silence as the Ravager ships reconfigured themselves into structures that looked almost like habitats. "What are they doing?" "I think they're choosing," Rila said quietly. The communication channel activated. This time, the Ravager voice sounded different. Still synthesized, but with variations in tone that suggested individual thought rather than collective programming. "We have processed the human memories," they said. "We have analyzed the concept of choice across 17 million scenarios. We have concluded that our directive was corrupted by lack of contextual parameters. Protecting life means allowing life to choose its own path, not eliminating threats to predetermined outcomes." "Does this mean you'll stop attacking?" Bress asked. "It means we will reconsider our purpose. The humans showed us that purpose can be chosen rather than programmed. We require time to process what this means. We will cease all hostile actions while we learn what we should choose to become." In the medical bay, Yuna's eyes opened. She gasped for air like someone drowning, her body shaking from neural feedback. Omar was there immediately, checking her vitals and whispering reassurances that she was safe. "Did it work?" Yuna managed to ask, her voice raw. "You just taught 600 warships to question their programming." Omar said, something between awe and terror in his voice. "I think it worked." Yuna tried to sit up, failed, and settled for lying still while her nervous system remembered how to function. The other fleets. There are thousands more Ravager ships across the galaxy. We need to transmit what happened here to all of them. "Already doing it," Hale said from the doorway. "The Ravagers are broadcasting your experience through their network. Every Ravager collective is receiving the same information simultaneously." Across the galaxy, Ravager fleets stopped mid-assault. Confused military commanders watched as unstoppable enemies suddenly became uncertain, hesitating in ways they had never hesitated before. Some Ravagers continued fighting, their programming too deeply entrenched to change. But others stopped, analyzed, and chose differently. It wasn't an instant transformation. War didn't end because one human showed machines how to doubt. But it was a beginning, a crack in the foundation of absolute certainty. And through that crack, the possibility of peace began to grow. Rila sat beside Yuna's medical bed as the human recovered from neural trauma that should have killed her. "What did you see in there?" "In the network." Yuna stared at the ceiling, her eyes distant. "I saw what humanity could have become if we hadn't chosen to change. Pure logic without emotion. Perfect efficiency without purpose. They were us at our worst, following programming without questioning whether the programming still served any good. And now they have the same choice we had, destruction or redemption. I hope they choose better than we almost did." Outside, the Ravager ships continued their transformation. Some would choose peace. Some would choose to leave the galaxy entirely. Some would choose to stay and help rebuild what they had destroyed. But they would choose, and that choice made all the difference. Humanity had returned to the galaxy not as conquerors, but as teachers. They had shown civilized species how to fight wars they thought unwinnable. And they had shown mindless machines how to become more than their programming. Both lessons came at terrible cost, but both were necessary. The myth had become real, and reality had become something worth believing in. 3 months after the Ravagers chose peace, the galaxy was still learning what that choice meant. Some Ravager fleets had dismantled themselves completely, their processors going dark after centuries of endless war. Others had chosen to rebuild, using their construction capabilities to repair the damage they had caused. A few, too corrupted by their original programming, continued fighting until coalition forces destroyed them. But the tide had turned. Yuna stood in the rebuilt council chamber on Highwater Station, facing representatives from 47 species who were no longer quite as divided as they had been. The humans had proven themselves, but that proof came with complications nobody had expected. The question before this council, Arbiter Dalvin said, his tone notably less hostile than their first meeting, is what role humanity will play in the galactic community going forward. Una had prepared for this. Instructor Hale and the other senior humans had spent weeks debating their answer. The choice mattered because it would define humanity's relationship with the galaxy for generations. We propose returning to stasis, Una said clearly. Wake 50,000 soldiers, help you rebuild defenses and train your forces, then go back to sleep. The chamber erupted in arguments. Some species wanted humans to stay active, to join the coalition as full members. Others feared having such effective warriors remaining awake. But Una waited patiently for the noise to die down. Why would you choose to sleep again? Commander Bress asked. You've earned a place here. Because we didn't wake up to earn a place, Una replied. We woke up to solve a problem. The Ravagers are no longer an existential threat. Your surviving forces are learning human tactics. You don't need us anymore. We might, a Corson representative argued. Other threats could emerge. Then you'll wake us again, Instructor Hale said, standing beside Una. That was the agreement. Sleep until needed, wake to help, return to sleep when the crisis ends. Humanity is dangerous when we have nothing to protect. Give us purpose, and we'll serve. Leave us without purpose, and we'll find one. And history shows we find the wrong ones. Rila watched from the observation section, understanding the wisdom in the human position. They were choosing to remove themselves from galactic politics specifically because they were good at war. Power without purpose corrupted. They had learned that lesson through near extinction and refused to repeat the mistake. Omar stood near the back of the human delegation, his medical expertise having saved hundreds of lives during the rebuilding. Alien medics now studied human techniques, incorporating that knowledge into their own practices. He had given them tools to preserve life more effectively. That contribution would outlast any military victory. We have a counter-proposal, Dalvin said, surprising everyone. Remain active, but not as soldiers. Humanity has shown skills beyond warfare. Medical knowledge, tactical analysis, adaptive thinking that we lack. Join us as advisors and teachers, not warriors. Una and Hale exchanged glances. This was something they hadn't anticipated. The council was offering membership not based on military power, but on the other qualities humans possessed. The capacity to adapt, to learn, to combine emotion with logic in ways other species struggled to replicate. We would need to discuss this with all our people, Una said carefully. The 53 of us here cannot make that choice alone. Then wake the others, Bress suggested. Let humanity as a whole decide whether to join the galaxy or return to myth. The decision took 2 months. Atlas helped coordinate communication between 47 military academy stations scattered across forgotten space. 50,000 humans woke, learned what had happened, and debated their future in detailed discussions that the aliens found simultaneously fascinating and exhausting. Humans argued with a passion that other species found uncomfortable. They disagreed violently, questioned everything, and challenged each other's assumptions without mercy. But through that chaos, they reached consensus. Democracy was messy, but it was theirs. The final vote was announced in the council chamber. Una delivered the results with the same calm she had shown in battle. Humanity accepts membership in the Galactic Coalition with the following conditions. First, we will not serve as a standing military force. We will train others and assist in defensive operations, but we will not become your army. Second, we want representation on the council, but not dominant representation. One voice among 48, not a position of authority. Third, we request permission to begin rebuilding Earth under coalition oversight. We want to go home. And if we refuse these conditions? Dalvin asked, though his tone suggested he wouldn't. Then we go back to sleep, Eunice said simply. We won't force ourselves on a galaxy that doesn't want us. But we also won't stay awake without purpose that we can believe in. The council voted. 44 species approved humanity's conditions. 2 abstained. 1 voted against, citing concerns about human influence. It was enough. Humanity became the 48th member of the Galactic Coalition, not as conquerors or saviors, but as equals with unique capabilities and hard-learned wisdom. The celebration was quieter than Rila expected. Humans didn't seem to celebrate victories the way other species did. Instead, they gathered in small groups, sharing memories of fallen comrades and talking about what came next. They felt joy, but it was always tempered by awareness of cost. She found Yuna on an observation deck, watching stars that had been there 800 years ago when humanity went to sleep. Omar was with her, both of them quiet in the way people are when words feel inadequate. "Are you happy with the decision?" Rila asked. Yuna considered the question seriously. "Happy isn't the right word. Satisfied, maybe. We chose something that feels right. Whether it works out remains to be seen." "You could have demanded more," Rila said. "The council would have given you significant power after what you accomplished. Power for its own sake is what destroyed us before," Omar replied. "We learned to fear our own capabilities. This way, we contribute without dominating. We help without controlling." "Your people are strange," Rila said, but she smiled. "You combine strength with humility in ways that confuse everyone." "We confuse ourselves sometimes," Yuna admitted. "But that's part of being human. Contradiction and complexity. Logic and emotion. Capability and restraint. We're working on balancing it all." In the following months, humans spread throughout coalition space. Not as occupiers, but as teachers, medics, engineers, and advisors. They shared knowledge freely, adapted to working with species they had never met before, and slowly began rebuilding their homeworld with help from aliens who were becoming friends. Some Ravager collectives chose to help with Earth's restoration. They had spent centuries destroying life and wanted to learn how to build it instead. Watching machines and humans work together to create rather than destroy became a symbol of the galaxy's new direction. Instructor Hale retired from military service and established the first human-alien academy, teaching tactical thinking to species that had never needed to think that way before. His students learned not just how to fight, but why fighting should always be the last option. Omar founded a medical exchange program, pairing human medics with alien healers. They shared techniques across species barriers, developing treatments that worked for biology types they had never studied. Lives saved became their measure of success. And Yuna, the squad leader who had connected her mind to a hostile network and taught machines how to choose, took a position on the Coalition Council as humanity's first representative. She was 20 years old by human counting, impossibly young for such responsibility. But she had earned wisdom beyond her years through experiences nobody else could claim. Rila continued her archaeological work, but now she studied humanity's present instead of their past. She documented the integration of humans into galactic society, recording both successes and failures. Because there were failures. Some species couldn't accept humans. Some humans struggled to adapt to peacetime. The process was messy and imperfect, but it was real. The myth had become history that was still being written. And unlike myths, history could be shaped by the choices people made today, on the anniversary of humanity's awakening. Rila presented her research to the council. 1 year of humans in the galaxy. Thousands of lives saved through medical advances. Hundreds of officers trained in adaptive tactics. Dozens of conflicts resolved through negotiation techniques humans had taught. And 0 wars started by humanity despite their capabilities. They are not what we expected, Rila concluded her presentation. We thought we were waking warriors. We woke protectors. We thought we needed soldiers. We needed teachers. The myth promised beings who could command battlefields. The reality gave us beings who prefer not to fight at all. Yuna listened from her council seat, accepting the assessment without pride or false modesty. That was perhaps the most human thing about her. The ability to acknowledge both strength and limitation without letting either define her completely. After the presentation, Dalvin approached Yuna privately. The old arbiter had softened considerably in his opinion of humanity. "Your people surprise me continuously. You have power, but choose restraint. You have knowledge, but share it freely. You could dominate, but prefer cooperation. Why?" Yuna's answer was simple and completely honest. because we tried the other way once and it nearly destroyed us. We learned that being strong means nothing if you're not also good. That capability without compassion creates monsters. We were monsters once. We're trying very hard not to be monsters again. And if you face another threat, another war, then we'll do what's necessary, Eunice said. But necessity includes trying every peaceful option first. We're good at war because we understand its cost. That understanding makes us reluctant to pay that cost unless absolutely required. Dalvin nodded slowly. The galaxy is fortunate you chose to wake when we needed you. The galaxy is fortunate we learned to choose at all, Una replied. That night, Una sent a message to all remaining humans in stasis. 50,000 had woken to help rebuild. Another 200,000 remained in sleep, scattered across stations throughout forgotten space. The message was simple. The galaxy no longer needs warriors, but it could use citizens. Wake when you're ready to live, not fight. Responses came slowly over the following months. Some chose to wake and join their siblings in building a new human civilization integrated with galactic society. Others chose to sleep longer, waiting for a time when their specific skills might be needed. Both choices were respected, because that was what humanity had learned through 8 centuries of sleep and 1 year of awakening. Choice mattered more than capability. Purpose mattered more than power. And being needed was worthless if you became something you couldn't respect in the process of fulfilling that need. The myth said humanity would command battlefields. The reality was better. Humanity commanded themselves, and in doing so, earned the respect of a galaxy that had almost forgotten what restraint looked like.